Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are usually two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. But today we are four best friends.
Yay!
Because we are welcoming to the pod back again, Fiction Fans, for a wonderful episode of Nostalgia Book Club. I feel like I just got so much
Sara and Lilly, welcome.
welcome back.
Hi. Oh, it's so much
nice
fun to be here.
back.
I know we've been making the joke on the podcast that we're finally doing Ella, just Ella for Sara, because I kept saying we would do it and then I would change my mind and I would make her read a book about horses or angels.
And this
When is the book about
not
horse
about either.
angels? When is that
Ooh.
coming?
Oh my gosh. I think I wrote that for a fan fiction when I was 6 years old and in grade school. So I remember there was a very specific Pegasi, horses that fly up into the sky book that I wrote. So we'll bring that back for the next Nostalgia Book Club. Like,
Yes,
here is
we'll
the
have to
book
cover that.
Hannah
Yes.
wrote where the horse was named Sweetie because I was 6.
I'm really looking forward to reading that one. I think it's going to be a great episode.
It's going to be so wonderful. But no,
I might
today-
actually enjoy it.
I go, Laura, did you like this book? And she goes, I'll save my thoughts for the podcast. And I was like, oh, the death knell. But today we are covering Just Ella by Margaret Peterson Haddix. Now, Sara, why don't we start with you? What is your journey with Just Ella?
So I read Just Ella as a child, and I remember liking it a lot. And I haven't read it since. And it was a book.
It was a
is
book that
indeed.
really, it is a book. They did publish this, Simon and Schuster,
Ugh.
right away. Lilly, what's your journey with this book?
I also read this around, I want to say middle school. It was obviously part of my fairy tale retellings era, as I'm sure I'm not alone in having.
Oh no.
But it definitely got overshadowed by the other 10,000 Cinderella retellings that are out there. And I found that I remembered very little of it.
I remembered so little of this book. Laura, what's your journey with this book?
My journey is that it's a very short journey. I read the book today. And
She texted me a couple of hours ago saying it's not done yet. And I was like, do you need my Spotify login for the audiobook? And she said, no, I've got this. So
and it was a short book. But about halfway through, I was questioning, was this the right book? Did I read the right one? Because I was not expecting this. So that's my journey.
I also read this book in school. This could be a false memory, but I almost remember picking it up from one of those like scholastic book fairs that came to your school.
That makes sense.
Because I'm just obsessed with the old cover. I really hate the new covers that they've been publishing this under. It's like a woman walking up the stairs in like silhouette. But the original cover was like Ella in like a fancy period like dress, and then like part of the cover is ripped and it's her in her old like garb on the ripped page. And I remember being obsessed with the cover and reading it and loving it a lot. And I reread it for this podcast and I had a great time, but it is just, it's a book, as Sara said. So,
It is a book.
it is a book. So for people who didn't read this book, and if you didn't, who are you? We follow 15-year-old Ella Brown after she's met the amazing Prince Charming, and she's engaged and preparing for her wedding day. And as she's there, she is being trained by a woman named Madame Bisset, who tells her she only does things wrong. And then this girl named Mary, who's a young servant girl who's kind of there to help her. And then Jed Reston, what a name, Jedediah, who is standing in for his father, who just had a stroke as her history teacher.
Yep, this book starts with a stroke. So
I actually was really confused because it starts like in situ and there's no backstory whatsoever until you get like halfway through. And I was like, did I miss the first, like, is this the second book in a series?
They were
No.
really banking on you knowing Cinderella, and we all did, but like it's still really weird to have zero context and just be like, this man is having a stroke and she's
and she's being told not to help him.
Oh my
Mhm.
God. She's just like, this was,
What?
this book was such a like, be careful because royal people would never lift a finger to help you. And it's like, if a man is dying, I'm sure they would get someone. Like,
I really hope that the royal family, if they saw someone having a stroke, that they would come to their aid. I
no,
I'm
they said, how
pretty
dare you
sure.
have the open shirt?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that this book tells us no, they would not.
Yeah, that
So
is the
depressing.
moral of this book. So throughout the book, we kind of just follow Ella. We learn about her journey and the infamy of her being Little Cinder's Ella. And we learn the backstory. People think that she's magic, and she learns that she doesn't actually love the prince. She loved not being abused by her stepmother. And now that she is out, she no longer wants to marry the prince when she finds out that he is a big old dum-dum. And then they lock her in the dungeon and she has to dig through poop, which is what I remembered from this book, to escape and get away. And then she runs to Jed's camp where he is helping war
refugees, because that's his
refugees.
passion.
Yeah, he does have a passion for refugees. And through the events of the end of the novel, they do fall in love, and she realizes she has feelings for Jed and they will likely get married. So the second man she met, not the first.
Yeah,
And
because
that
she
is
has a moment where she has kind of an oh shit moment where she's like, I don't love this man. I think I got caught up in this and now I'm in trouble because I'm supposed to marry him. So then she falls in love with the second guy.
But actually, so the line that I think saved the whole book,
Oh.
when Jed proposes to her, is that a spoiler?
no, we're
No.
spoiling this, but I just gave you guys the rundown.
No one's
of
gonna
the
read
book.
this.
Like, do a deep dive.
Her answer to the proposal is, "Can you give me 6 months and ask again?"
I
Yes.
also
Okay.
liked that.
Okay, yes, I like that. That's great. But she's 15 and only
Yes.
asking for
Is that-
6 months, and he's
Thought she was older.
20.
No,
No.
she is 15. That is
Yeah.
Oh, no.
canon.
So like
I thought she was like
She-
18.
she should be asking for like a couple of years,
Also,
not just 6 months.
this book like swims in the like, do you guys remember the Swan Princess movie where
Mhm.
where he's like, you're beautiful, and she's like, but what else? And he's like, well, what else is there? And Jed, he's like, she's like, well, why do you like me? And he's like, because you're beautiful. And she's like, is that it? And he's like, no, there are so many other things. And I'm like, but it is the first one he said, Ella, which
Yes.
means that you as a 15-year-old girl should get a little bit of a backbone and be like, maybe not you either, and just like move along.
I will say though that like throughout the book, Ella does stand out, like stand up for herself, and does like stand up to Lucille, her evil stepmother, and then to her tutor and stuff like that. So it's not like she doesn't have she's not given any kind of agency at all. She is a strong-willed person, but there's just a lot of moments
She's
throughout where I'm
just
like,
not sensible when it comes to love.
oh no. But
Like-
again, I guess she's 15, so what can we expect?
I do think there is part of this book where it's like, well, this was like, we read it all in middle school when we were around 12 or 13. And around
And
that time,
15-year-olds were adults.
yes, 15-year-olds were adults who could make their own decisions. And it was back when, so that made it even better because everyone died super early and it was just fine. So, but as an adult, not so great.
Can we talk about the horrible imprisonment that happens when Ella tries to escape her marriage and the prince forcibly ties her up and brings in the tutor, and they're like, you know what, we're going to throw her in a dungeon. And not only that, we will bring a convicted rapist to stand outside of her cell to threaten her with.
I was shocked by the convicted rapist in this book. Did anyone remember that?
No.
This is a shocking part of the story.
So yeah, Prince Charming, she tries to break up with him like in a very adult way where she's like, hey, I don't think we like each other that much. I think we had infatuation. And he ties her up and they call in the brigade, like Laura said, and they put her in the dungeon. I actually did really like this part before the rapist came up because like it is where Ella shines with her humor and wit, where she was like, I kind of was just impressed he was having his own independent thought. Like I kind of wanted to see what happened.
But things become a lot less funny really quick.
Yes. And why Quag? Like, it was deeply problematic.
Yeah, he's like making comments before they even reveal that he's been convicted. It's bad, but he's making comments about how he always wanted women and they never wanted him, so now he gets what he wants. I'm like, oh.
And I mean, he is pretty bad in and of himself. But the fact that they put him there just so that Charming can kill him and pretend to save the day is also kind of terrible.
Yes.
Okay, it was all horrifying, but I was kind of impressed that the book acknowledged that assault exists.
Yes.
And it kind of felt like, what was his name? Quag was a stand-in, because, I mean, I think the real implication would have been that she didn't have a choice. Charming would have assaulted her if they had stayed together. Yeah. But the book couldn't go quite that far. So it was like, who's the stand-in to threaten her with sexual assault? Someone big, scary, and ugly.
Handsome. He would never.
So like it almost got there with acknowledging that it exists, but couldn't like quite follow through all the way.
Well, and
agreed.
There's like, it's deeply ableist, because Quag, like, an entire thing is like he doesn't speak well, he doesn't have like a ton of smarts, but because, and he's like this monstrous looking creature who like Ella is like shuddering at the thought of being with him. And I totally like, there is that he's the stand-in for Charming because they can't go that hard, but they also don't go that hard, and they're always like, well, Charming's just so beautiful, and it's like, well, let's not teach young girls that there's a difference. Like, they are both monstrous, and they do sort of recognize that when Ella is like, yeah, I'm not impressed that you murdered this man for me. Like, that's not impressive. You were never in danger from him. So what's going on? But it did feel like particularly ableist reading it in 2024.
Quag definitely kind of has the vibes of like the character from the Goonies, where it's like, we should be terrified of this disabled person, and it's like, oh, don't like this at all.
I mean, this book has a lot of similar stereotypes that just don't age well.
Yeah.
Like all of the fatphobia in the book, and this ableism, as you point out.
The fatphobia runs deep in this book. Like, it's in the first chapter where Ella is supposed to be like this bastion of like goodness and wit and beauty, and she's so free-spirited and everyone you want to be. And then she's just like, look at this fatso over here having a stroke.
Well, and also the only reason that her sisters are bad, as far as we know, because we don't actually see them, is that they're fat.
Yeah. And they're ugly. Like,
and ugly.
Yeah.
And also they mention many times how ugly her friend Mary is, which bothered me so much. I'm like, what? Like, she brings it up to her face, I think, at one point, where she's like, it's too bad that you're so ugly that you could never become a princess like me. And, like,
well, I think, again, the book was trying to get at pretty privilege, but did it badly.
Yeah.
Yes. I do appreciate that they tried to touch on pretty privilege, because she does seem to recognize, like, hey, I happen to be smart and like free-spirited, but like, I'm only where I am because I'm very, very pretty. And that doesn't sit right with me, because I think it's ridiculous that I'm only here based on my looks. And I'm like, well, at least they acknowledged it. But then she also talks out of both sides of her mouth because she shames her ugly stepsisters. So
well, and then the ending, the classic middle school revenge. Everyone who was ever mean to me got fat. That's her triumphant ending, which is just mind-boggling.
Good thing they changed the fashion so it was okay.
I feel bad that she had to be like anorexic for so long, though, when they were like, well, you could have just changed the fashion. That's also an option.
Well, it's just, well, and that was like baffling too, because she mentions that she had been starving. And so then when she started to actually like get nourishment, she obviously was gaining some weight, but it was never mentioned that she was, I don't think that she considered herself to be fat or anything.
No.
She was
she
like,
just stopped being
I'm a more,
emaciated.
I'm a more healthy weight. But then the prince like mentioned something to her like, don't worry, we've noticed that you've packed on the pounds, but you'll lose it before the wedding. And then they bring in a corset and everything, and it's like, what in the world is happening here?
Yeah, the like two-facedness of, I guess the corset made your waist small if you're into that kind of thing. And then the next page going, all those people who are fat are terrible. It's like, well, what?
So strange.
Did anyone think that like Prince Charming's family was going to wind up being like much more sinister with the fact that there was a war going on in a neighboring country? Like I thought there was going to be some big scheme to like overthrow the government, but no, she just marries Jed and stays at a refugee camp, which is his passion, as Laura pointed out.
Which it seemed like that would have tied in better, but
right. Like I was so shocked when that plot line was just like, oh no, the war exists. We're just living in it. Like
I mean,
I'm not upset that the war's in there, but it's just
No.
like, why this doesn't connect to anything.
I definitely thought not necessarily that there was going to be something related to the war, but that there was going to be more like retribution for running away, because she runs away and she's afraid of people finding her. And then she hears that the wedding happened anyway, and we find out later that Charming just married one of her stepsisters because that was the best way of saving face. And on the one hand, I kind of like that subversion of my expectations, but also I definitely was expecting there to be conflict there.
It was weird.
It bothered me so much because why didn't they just do that from the first place? Like, why do all of this like prison stuff when the obvious solution was just replace her? And that they do get there eventually, but it feels like it was just very convenient for Ella when that happened.
So there is a running joke in a TV show that both Laura and I watch called New Girl about how one of them always goes too big with a prank or too little, and he does not know the in between. And sometimes that's what this plot feels like, where it's either they're going like too big or way too little, where it's just like, well, we now have this like ableist representation of a rapist in the room with you, and he might rape you. But also when you run away, you're fine. It's nothing's bad is going to happen to you. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, they never went after her or anything at all. You're absolutely right. Like, why did they have to go so hard with the dungeon thing?
Yeah, it's awfully convenient when they decided that it didn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
They could have done that when she first tried to break up with him, because obviously, like, forcing someone to marry him against her will is not gonna like go well in the long run.
Well, especially when like he's the prince. They control the narrative. They could have like cast her out of the palace and been like, no, 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 she's impure. We're not gonna do this. Like, she has to go home back to her hovel. And like that probably would have been okay. It's the fact that they were like, no, 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 it must be her. We have to save face. Save face from who?
I mean,
I also
like,
don't understand why it had to be her stepsister too. Like, it must stay within that family. Like, why?
They definitely could have said, oh, we didn't realize that she was a commoner.
Yeah.
And we found out. So now the marriage is off.
No, because that does make them look stupid.
That's
but
I don't know.
like I mean, in a poorly thought out way, but I don't have high expectations for this family. But we can't let people know we made a mistake.
Would not want people to know that they made a mistake. That seems too logical, Sarah.
But they could decide that like we didn't like her anymore because they were all upset that we can't let people know you didn't want to marry the prince.
Yeah. And she probably wouldn't have told
flip it.
anyone. Like, she doesn't care. They're making it way bigger in their head. There is a weird insulation of the royals in this book. Like, most of the bad stuff happens with like Madame Bissette, who we find out also came from nothing, but like,
Yeah, she pulled herself up by her bootstraps.
was
apparently.
not pretty, so she had to do it the hard way, and that made her evil. Like, there's just, it's that weird, like you said, Lily, like back talking where they're like, well, it doesn't matter. Like, royals are terrible, but also the worst person is going to be the person who was self-made. Like, why?
It felt again like this book was trying to do something with right, like being privileged doesn't automatically make you a good person.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting concept. But the way that it played out on the page was Ella constantly having this thought that things aren't actually even any better now. I might as well be poor and starving. And it's like, well, I'm not sure if that's how far you should swing the other direction.
Too extreme overcorrection.
Yeah. Like, you're right. Being rich and hot doesn't make him automatically a good person. Ooh, I don't think there's no benefit to having money. Maybe not dying of starvation and plague is a good thing. Tell all the refugees they're better off being poor because no one expects them to do needlepoint.
You should really be very happy because you get to maybe read books, if you can read.
Yeah.
Oh,
is this
gosh.
book just championing the middle class? Is that what it is?
I think they're championing the upper middle class.
Yeah.
Some class.
There's some class that's being told that they're amazing.
It's also an interesting take on like what's ladylike and what's not, because she is weirdly chastised so much for just asking a question or like wanting to see an event that she's being forced to attend, and they're like, no, the curtain must remain closed because we can't distract the players with your virginity.
Okay,
And
but that was hilarious. I really thought that was funny that they had to go to this event and then they're like, curtain
ask a
closed.
question.
It feels very, and I think this makes sense given the intended age range of the audience, but it feels very much like what a 12-year-old girl would expect from castle life.
Yeah, I do needlepoint. I can't see a man's open chest when he's convulsing on the floor.
Go to that sports game, they'll crash because they'll be still blinded with my beauty.
What was up with the like anti-needlepoint propaganda in this book?
She had done enough sewing in her lifetime, Lily. That's what being in the lower
Couldn't
class.
get injured doing that.
She was so mean to the people who were good at it, as if it's not a skill or an art form of its own. She's like, they're so useless. They don't do anything with their hands. They're also better at needlepoint than me, but that doesn't count for some reason.
Well, this came out in 1999, which was peak of Not Like the Other Girls. So I do feel like the early 2000s was definitely like, I'm not like the other girls. I won't do needlepoint. And it's like, yeah, but you're also like gorgeous and Western beauty standards abound. So of course, you get to not be like the other girls.
Yeah.
I felt really bad for Simpriana because you can tell just by the name that you're not supposed to like her and that she's supposed to be really dumb. But there's not really any evidence of that in the text. And she deserved better.
She's an incredible artist.
It is very weird from like a 1999 perspective when this book came out to see like what 12-year-olds thought was amazing. Because like we all read this, or except for Laura, who read it as a 32-year-old and adored it. But
yes,
we all read it in like
I'll read it every
middle
night
school and we all loved it. So I do think that there is something where it's like it is a very specific moment in time where Cinderella was on the up and coming, where there was like the Cinderella story and and there's so many different like retellings and feminist quote unquote of like how amazing they are. And it also shows like the media we consumed and why it's problematic, where it's like, oh, you're just a young little girl who's like, I can't be a princess if I'm ugly. It's supposed to be telling you that like beauty comes from within inside. And it does seem like it's almost like absurdly comedic, but at the same time, it just feels like it's reinforcing all the stereotypes we like that messed us up as children just right in a book.
I feel like this book kind of like was almost like a sponge where it soaked up a lot of popular and tropey things, but also like absorbed some of the messages that we do technically want to pass along to young girls, but it needed to be wrung out a little bit to get some of those things out of there, where it was just like, yeah, we don't need Quag in here. Like that Quag is too much. I'm sorry.
Just make the prince more sinister. Like that's an easy edit, like to make him more sinister.
Let's not have all the fatphobia.
No, I would like to keep that in there.
Okay.
How did we feel about the section where we found out that like Lucille had entranced Ella's dad with her vagina. Where she was just like, oh yeah, they would just disappear. And then all of a sudden she was getting her way again. And I was like, wow, what a weird thing to put in a
And then she
12-year-old's
really
book.
bashed his hobbies and stuff. She's like, get away from those books. They're awful. Like, what?
Well, she was like, that stupid idiot. He went into war-torn country for his books. He deserved to die. And it's like, wow,
Okay.
yeah.
To be fair, it sounds like it was probably pretty stupid for him to go like into an active war zone.
But the books, Lily.
The library.
He has to build it.
That's like the only thing I agree with her on, but I do want to defend her in that one moment. I don't think he had great judgment.
He did have great judgment, but don't say it in front of his little girl who's like
Yes.
suffering from her dad, just being like, oh, sorry, your dad sucks. Like, peace out.
It was interesting though how often Ella like contemplated their relationship and was like, well, I don't want to be like those two. Like things went south pretty quick.
I mean, I feel like the easy answer to that is to be a little bit more discerning about who you get in a relationship with, which
that
she
can't
does
be it.
not do necessarily. So
I mean, she
Sometimes
gives
she
it 6
does.
months.
Yeah.
With a man that she has known for more than 30 minutes. So that's growth.
Also, what bothers me about that is like, it's definitely the energy of someone who it's like, hey, I'm not really looking for a serious relationship. And someone's like, can we revisit it in like 6 months to see if you're somewhere else? And then every time you're with them, they're like, well, you know, in 6 months when we're going to talk about if we're going to be in a relationship or not. And you're like, well, that's not what this was. It was supposed to be like, we're revisiting my feelings. Because she, even in the book, is like, well, things would often turn to like what it would be after we were married. And I'm like, well, then you're not waiting 6 months, you idiot. Like,
Right, because then she's talking about like, well, when we have kids, well, if we're in this refugee camp, well, if we're in this situation, oh, you're thinking about this nonstop.
yeah. Which is also a very young 15-year-old girl thing to do, but
Yes.
still.
well, he was also bringing it up all the time.
Yes.
Yeah. I did not like that.
But he loved her for many reasons, not just her beauty.
He was going to let her go to medical school.
He was.
How progressive of him.
I love this Wikipedia page because it says, like the prince, he finds Ella very beautiful, but he can see her humor, courage, intelligence, and perseverance. And it's like, yeah, because he said it out loud once that he didn't really.
I'm questioning him.
Yeah.
Also, his dad died, and I felt like that was another like rough detail. Like the whole storyline with his dad was pretty rough. Like he has a stroke at the beginning, and then he dies later on in the book, and Jed's just kind of like, well, I guess he died. I better go back. You're still gonna hang out and wait for me, right? What?
The book kind of tried to play the like, oh, he wasn't close with his father, so he wasn't upset. But that did not come up at all
No.
until that point.
Nope.
And he was like only mad because that meant he had to take his job. But
He
like,
had to take his job.
He
Like,
seems
yeah.
so apathetic about it all.
yeah.
Well, I think that goes back to like what you were saying about the fact that this book is trying to say something. Like the book was trying to critique like the fact that your duties had to pass like down the line and you couldn't make your own way and you couldn't do this and couldn't do that. And so that's sort of what's happening, but not really, because all it's doing is like Jed doesn't give a shit about his dead father.
Yeah. It also could have been a commentary on like parental relationships because we don't get a ton of info on like Charming's relationship with his family. And so this relationship with Jed maybe could have been like commentary on like, oh yeah, you don't have to always do everything that your parents want you to do, this or that, you know, but or have like a close relationship with them. And it kind of missed the mark because it just came off like, oh, wait, what? They weren't close? Oh.
He was filling
If
in
you
for
say
him.
so.
Yeah, he was filling in for him for quite a while. Like he was hanging
He was
around.
in the infirmary for quite a long time. Is that why they
Yeah.
weren't close? Like,
he was just passed out for too long, and
He
he's
was
like, "Well,
just
I'm over it now."
suffering from a stroke. So
I feel like there are a lot of things that if this book had devoted more page time to, it would have been fine.
Yeah.
But because it's like a middle grade novel, and it's pretty short, it mentions things once and there's no actual like textual evidence to back it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like books for younger kids usually do a little bit more hand-holding. You know, they
Yeah.
present the hypothesis and then kind of work them through what the heck is going on here. And whereas in this book, it just kind of brings up some ideas and then does nothing with them. Like a 12-year-old can think through the horrors of sexual assault all on their own with no
Yeah.
guidance, and that's fine.
They understand the drama.
Yeah.
Well, now they're terrified because they've heard of Quag.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
And not understanding the power dynamics with Prince Charming and how that could be an issue.
Well, I do think
Age range do we think is the target for this?
I
I
usually
think-
expect books to be for a couple years younger than the main character.
Okay. So
Yeah, I was-
12-ish.
I was gonna say 10 to 12, which I think
Yeah.
is about when I read it.
Same. Weird time to be like discussing rapists in the dungeon though.
Yeah.
Just
Gets heavy.
yeah. I also thought when like she runs into Lucille at the house when she's trying to make her escape, Lucille also goes really hard.
Yes.
She's sitting there and she's like, I'm just trying to escape. I just want to be out of your hair. And Lucille's like, you were
Because she's
cast
naked
out.
also.
Yeah. And she's like, you were cast out. You're an idiot. Get back into the kitchen and start
We knew this would
cleaning."
happen.
And I was just like, in what world does this girl not look like she's trying to escape some kind of like horrifying situation? And you're just like, guess it's time to wash a dish, my girl.
Yeah, that was wild. And yeah, and then she steals a dress from one of the step evils because that's what she
Oh,
calls
she
them.
does call them the step evils.
Yeah, and that's how she escapes off to the refugee camp.
Carrying 6 books because that's a practical thing to do.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, she
But that
a
is
reader.
how 15-year-olds pack, so that was fine.
Yeah, that's
Honestly, I
true.
pack that way too, where it's like,
Yeah,
I'm going
that's-
somewhere for the weekend, I'll need 8 books.
Yeah,
it is. But like, if she's trying to walk however many miles each day with very little food, very little water, and 6 heavy books, she should be discarding some of those along the way. Like, okay, I wanted to
Oh.
take this, but I just can't carry it.
Can't ruin that TBR.
This is a
You're
wild
absolutely right,
novel.
though, because you're just being too realistic, I think.
I think my problem is that I just got back from a backpacking trip last month, and I'm like, man, I know what my pack was like. I would not want to carry 6 additional hardcover books on top of that.
Well, she also didn't pack like barely any food. She was like, well, I've been starving for months, so I'll be fine. And it's like, well, will you? Like, you don't know
No.
where you're going.
I don't
It's always really weird to me when like a main character has never been outside their town, but they're perfectly self-sufficient on the road.
Oh yeah, she foraged for food because that's something she just knew.
Yeah.
Folk
if
knowledge.
she could forage for food, why didn't she do that when she was living with her stepmother and stepsisters?
Well, and she's surprisingly like witty and wily, you know, because she does like trick that guy, the glassblower, into like making her some slippers and everything. And it's like, why wasn't she trying to get food this way? Like going to the local merchants and betting them and stuff. Like some of these things aren't adding up now, the more I think about it.
Well, she never had enough time. That was her big thing. She had to maintain the entire household, so there just was no time to do that. But Laura remains unconvinced.
I think there's got to be time to eat.
I mean, would there have been any consequences for her if she just didn't do what her stepmother said?
Well, and the other thing too, like when she goes back to Lucille, when she's naked, she goes back there and she's like, haha, this place looks like a dump because they can't take care of it without me. Why is that the first thing you're thinking of? Get in there and get some clothes.
What did you guys think of the actual backstory of like what Cinderella did in this book? Like with the glass blower.
I liked the glassblower thing.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting take on how to make the Cinderella story not have any magic.
Mhm.
So in that respect, I really liked it.
Agreed.
I really liked it. I thought it was good. I really liked the like little nugget of them being in 2 separate ballrooms where they were putting all the uggos into one room and all the pretty people into the other. I actually
She's
really
like, they
liked
did announce my name like a beauty pageant.
And she was like, it's so nice in here. And like everyone else is like over there in the Uggo one, just like hanging out. I did like that detail
That's
because
why
I
the
thought,
step evils didn't hear me.
yeah, because like it kind of goes back to Sarah, like, yeah, there's no magic in this. So how were they able to hide from each other? How were they, able to do all these different details and having it like be real world, but still playing with the fantasy where it's like a bunch of rumors in the castle, which who in the castle was like, I think it was a fairy godmother. Who came up with that idea?
It did kind of make it more fun though. Like I appreciated the retelling from that standpoint where it's just like, oh, we all thought it was a fairy godmother and a magic pumpkin, but actually it's just a girl who's pretty scrappy and had a curfew. Like that's more fun.
It does make her a more interesting character, right? Like we don't get that story until a third, half away through the book, something
Mhm.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it gives her so much more agency than the original Cinderella, and also what we've seen from her so far in the book.
Do wonder if it would have been better, like Sarah was saying, to have that be at the front of the book, to be like, here's what happened, like smash cut to like, here's how I got here. And then it like flashes back instead of a third of the way through the novel where we find out everything that went down.
I think that for me, it was too far back in the novel. Like, it didn't necessarily have to be right at the very beginning. It didn't have to be chronological, but I spent so much time wondering what I was missing,
Mm-hmm.
and thinking that like there was this big chunk of book that I should have read, and it didn't. The way that it was done was not particularly like fluid.
Mm-hmm.
It's jarring when you
Yeah.
switch to that like backstory because I was like, wait, what? Okay.
It was done
Yeah.
in a way that feels like the author was very proud of themselves. Like, the readers are going to be so shocked when they find out the real story. And you never want to be able to tell an author feels smug.
You just want them to be smug secretly.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one was hard. I do, again, my biggest thing was I remember her digging through poop. That really stuck with me, that she was like a princess who had to go through the latrine and like break off the shovel handle. But reading it back, I'm like, why was this so dramatic? Like they had in
Also-
detailed discussions about like, can you hide the shovel? How will
Yeah.
they know that they like it was stolen from the palace walls? What's
Well, it's
going
like Mary
on?
goes through all that work to bring her the shovel, and then she spends all that time, like the first day, I have to dig a hole to hide the shovel. And then she spends all that time digging and everything. It's like, couldn't Mary have just brought you keys?
No, Quag had those, and we don't want to get near him. Or was he dead
Yeah.
by
True.
this point?
I
Maybe.
I can't
At some
remember. I
point
think
he
Quag was
was-
No,
still around.
He was
Wait.
still around, yeah.
Okay.
I think it goes with the story making conflict out of the weirdest things,
Yeah.
rather than what you expect to be the conflict.
Like the conflict is the rapist outside, not the shovel in the cell.
Divert your eyes from this.
Pay no mind to the man behind the curtain.
We'll
I
distract
wonder-
them with this shovel.
Well, and also like the conflict is digging the tunnel through the latrines and not everything that happens on the road to the refugee camp.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's real easy, but we spend a lot of time on the page digging through that latrine.
And talking to Madame Bisset. It felt like she had a very set number of characters she was allowed to introduce on the page. And once we hit those, she was like, well, you can't meet anymore. And it's like, but we could. Like, even a 12-year-old can recognize another name. I don't know why we had to do so much with Madame Bisset.
It feels like the moments that this book focuses on is trying to stay things that the reader could see themselves doing. Like a 12-year-old can dig a hole. So we're going to go into that in detail. 12-year-old probably is not self-sufficient enough to do several miles cross-country over several weeks. So we're just going to hand wave that away.
You don't want to read about walking. You're 12.
Yeah. But
12-year-olds
like
also
talking back
love
to
poop
teachers,
stories.
they can do that.
Oh man. So much talking back to the teachers in this of like, why is this not important? I did like that where like they have a discussion about education and like keeping things from her or doing those things. I thought that was like a smart way to show actual dangers when getting into a situation like this, where they could just like control all the information that's coming and going. They can control what you're eating, doing all these things. And I did like that part. And, you know, once what we learned about Meghan Markle was it's kind of all factual. So maybe Meghan Markle was sticking through poo at some point.
Dark.
Moral of the story.
Yeah.
I also think, though, when you're on the topic of education, that was really Ella's goal initially, right? To become a tutor rather than end up in Charming's engagement that was really bad. So it took a weird turn where it was just like all of a sudden she was like, okay, yeah, I'll get married, and didn't decide to become an educator. But I thought initially, like, oh, that was a good plan to become a teacher or a tutor.
Yeah, I mean, I think that she, in the beginning, she was really sensible. And then she was swayed by a pretty face, which understandable,
I get it.
to be fair. But everything kind of goes downhill for her after that. And I'm not entirely sure that she gets that sense back.
It's a cautionary tale. Do not get swept up.
I mean, it is though, isn't it? Isn't that the
Yeah.
whole point? Like,
Yeah. I do like that she never shamed herself for falling in love with Prince Charming. Like she says like, oh, I think it was an infatuation. I don't think it was actual love. But she also is like, yeah, that's also the first person who's ever showed me kindness. So even if I couldn't recognize why the kindness was happening, and once I found out, like I got the ick, like I can appreciate what I needed at the time and why I thought that way. And I actually thought that was really nice, especially for young girls to read about, like, don't take it too hard if you made a mistake in your feelings. That's okay.
And I do like that she recognizes and tries to deal with it. And as I think you said earlier, she does try to let him down in a very mature way. Doesn't go well for her, but that's not her fault.
But she does think it out and everything too, like what she's going to say. It's not like something that she just makes a snap decision. She thinks about it a while and tries to word it nicely and be upfront with him.
Yeah, and she also spends some time really just thinking about her own feelings, right? Like interrogating herself. You know, do I love him? Do I not love him? I appreciated that.
Is he dumb or is he just quiet?
Would we get along really well if we didn't have a chaperone in here?
Yeah. I did think it was funny of like, again, there's parts of this book that just become so absurd that they're hilarious to me, where like the chaperone, the prince is like, leave now. And the chaperone leaves. And she was like, you could have done that the entire time.
He's like, I make the rules.
I did find that funny. I actually thought she was in much more danger when it got to the charming part. And then when they just threw her in a dungeon, I was like, oh, okay, great. But it goes back to the quag of it all, where it was like, oh, I thought it was just going to be a book where that kind of fear didn't exist. But then they just brought it in with a mutilated person, which was not great.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, when Charming sort of flipped, and I mean, he hits her, right? Like he's aggressive towards her, and they tie her up and cart her off to the dungeon. Like during that moment, that was the first like, oh shit, like this book is really kind of going to deal with like the concept of domestic violence and like being trapped in a situation and like what do you do? And then, oh no, it's a dungeon with a monster guarding you. Don't worry about any of those actual interpersonal dynamics.
We're not interested in that. We want to give girls a happy ending with Jed.
Oh, it's so funny to me that you guys dislike Jed so much. I thought he was clearly a step up from Charming, and I was here for it.
He's just boring and has a passion for refugees, which seemed okay. We don't know enough about him to understand why.
Yeah.
Although I
go
agree,
ahead.
he is a step up from Charming.
Yes, you're not wrong. I just think she could have done better than Jed and his like, yeah, we'll totally wait 6 months for you to be ready, even though I'm 20 and you're 15. But like, you're ready to have my babies after that, right? Like, we're ready, right?
If they decided to get married when she was 20 and he was 25, I'd be fine with that and their relationship. But waiting 6 months is not enough when you're 15.
It also really ticked me off when she's like, well, why do you have feelings for me? And the first thing he said was beautiful. And then she was like, but so many other things. And I'm like, but also your first one was still the like surface level stuff. Like I would hope that's third or fourth on the list. And it's supposed to be, and I understand it from a storytelling perspective, where they want her to be like, oh no, he only likes me for my beauty. And then it's listing all those other things. But as an adult person, I'm like, if that is how the man lists it, don't date the 20-year-old. Don't date the 20-year-old in the first place because you're 15, but also specifically don't date that 20-year-old.
It's also mentioned like right in the character description on the Wikipedia page. Like the prince, he finds Ella very beautiful,
That's why.
but he can see her humor, courage, intelligence, and perseverance.
Oh, yeah. It's not great.
He's just boring, honestly, is maybe
Yeah.
his biggest thing, where it's just like he's just a little boring. And
You guys are 100% right about everything you're saying, but at that point in the book, I was just so like, I don't know if I was in the weeds or like in the world or what, but I was like 100% on board.
well, to your credit,
Lily
it's
is
a
like,
huge
I
step up
remember.
from domestic violence. I mean,
But that goes like, I think Ella is an interesting character. She's pretty dynamic. She has a lot of layers. There aren't a ton of interesting characters outside of Ella.
No.
Like, Mary is just there to not deliver her keys, but give her a shovel. And like, I think the most interesting characters would maybe be Lucille and Madame Bissette, but they're only as good as their villainy. And that like does suck when you're reading about it and you're not getting any more details.
It was so funny, that moment when Madame Bissette is explaining like why it's important, like why all of this etiquette shit is important and like all of this. I'm like, why didn't you do that like a month ago when you first started teaching it to her and she didn't understand why you were like such a stickler for it?
give
Oh
some
my God,
reasons.
that would have been really helpful to know.
Can I also ask, why is there French when this is a fantasy world?
I don't
I
know.
wondered that too.
Because
she
then she even
was-
like comments, she's like, even Mary has a better accent than me, which
Yeah, and
sucks
they
because she's just a chambermaid.
They
Like,
specifically call it out as being French. Like it's not some fantasy French, it's just French.
That does feel a
it's the
little bit weak.
pronunciation of Madame in particular that really bugs Ella.
Well, and like they live in a fake land. They live in Rhodesia, and the other location in the other books, because there are multiple books about this, but different starring people, is Swala. And so these are made up places. So why not just say like Hersualese or something?
Yeah, it's a fantasy world.
Yeah. But there
It's
is
like
a France.
the Princess Diaries, where it's like Genovia, and then there's Belgium, and then there's France, right?
Yeah.
At least with the Princess Diaries, like it takes place in our world. There's just this other country that doesn't exist. So I can get behind that.
I would love
But-
what comes out of this is a sudden discovery that Margaret Peterson Haddix does not believe that France exists.
French is just so pretentious, it knows no bounds.
You have to say Madame Bissette, and 12-year-old
Yeah.
girls are too stupid to know that that's technically French, even though it's not. But yeah, this is a weird, but I'm a little bit curious about the next books, even though they do not star Ella. Like, because the next books are kind of about like, I would say it's a short order for like maybe the 12 Dancing Princesses, where there is a girl who believes she's the true princess of Swala and her quest to claim the throne. However, she discovers that the pretender princess Desmia is only one of many. There are 11 girls who are raised or 13 total, who are raised individually by royal knights who all believe they were protecting the true princess in secret. In truth, after the king died, the queen had adopted 13 orphan girls after her own daughter was stillborn. Again, very
Wow.
like, it goes so hard on the parts you don't think they're going to go hard on.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and then the girls were separated shortly after the queen's death, entrusted to the royal knights. Her guardian learned the truth early and placed her on the throne while holding power for himself. Not the main character, another character, and then turned his former comrades when Cecilia and the other girls attempted to claim the throne. And then they decide to rule together because what's better than not royalty? 13 royals. And then Ella does make a brief appearance in the book as she accompanies Jed to peace talks between Swala and Fredacia. So, yeah.
So they're still working.
They're still working. And
Why
they're
is the
probably
court
married.
priest running the peace talks, though?
Because he's the one who wanted. No, that came up in this book. He was like, I
Right.
have to stay at court because I think I have the opportunity to convince the prince to do this.
Yeah. Convincing the prince, that's fine. I got that.
Our
But like,
issue is why is he in the room?
yeah, like why is he the one doing the peace talks?
I assume because no one else cares enough to.
Maybe
If everyone
maybe
else is like, war is great, no downside.
maybe there's an explanation along those lines in the book.
I don't know. This is so
I
weird.
think that was
They
probably
go
a better
really hard.
explanation.
Yeah, and then the third one is following the old like fake princess or something, I think. So it's like it feels like this book is not part of that series, but it is because Ella exists. Very weird.
It takes place in the same world
Yeah.
at about the same time period.
But the front cover of just Ella nowadays is so ugly. It's so bad, guys. It's just But yeah.
I got the ebook copy from the library, and it's the staircase one where it's just like the painted cover where there's a like silhouette of someone going up a staircase.
There's
I
that
feel
one.
like
I didn't
that
like it.
makes it seem like a much more stereotypical Cinderella story.
Yeah.
Whereas the old cover, which my paperback has that old cover too, feels much truer to the actual book.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
an even newer cover of like
of just a
woman
princess face.
like
Yeah.
rolling her eyes and wearing
I
a
hate
crown.
those. I hate
And-
book covers that are just a face.
Yeah.
In the background, it tells you what type of book, Sarah, because it says happily never after.
Ooh.
But it makes it seem like it's much more of like a modern day
Yeah.
story than it is.
That's what I was gonna say. That that cover with just the woman's face looks like a contemporary romance,
Mm-hmm.
not a book for children that takes place in a fantasy world.
Yeah.
Right.
This book was also like one of a line of quite a few books that I feel like fall under like princesses, but witty and independent. Because we also had like around the same time the two princesses of Bamarre.
Except I think that is a genuinely a really good book. I haven't reread it, so maybe I'll have to.
You said that about this one.
Okay, I did. That's true. But Just Ella never made me cry, and the two princesses of Bamarre, or have Bamarre, however it's pronounced, hits hard, as I recall.
I remember loving that book as well. I remember being so upset when I found out that the bookish girl was not the blonde, because I associated blonde women with being bookish, and it was like, no, the brunette is bookish, the blonde is adventurous. And I'm like, but look at her pale skin, she couldn't go out in the sun. Like, but we had books like that I feel like all kind of fell under this like feminist quote unquote retelling, where you read it and you're like, well, it's like second wave feminism of like, Ella is progressive because she chose to marry the second man she met. And isn't that amazing?
She didn't just date the first guy.
Well,
I mean,
she
she
does
did.
date the
Well,
first
she did.
guy.
She didn't just marry the first guy.
And also, it's just as hard to be rich as it is to be poor. Absolutely no differences in those experiences.
There's nothing. Yep, exactly. And
I wish
isn't it
this
a
was a video
shame?
format, because the way that Lily said that looked directly in the camera. Classic.
And isn't it a shame that Mary was such a butterface because she could never be a princess?
A little girl too.
She's like 10 years old. Well, she's almost marrying age, Laura, so watch yourself.
Okay.
They're compatriots. Do we have any final thoughts on this book?
I'm really glad I reread it. It's one of those that I definitely had a ghost spectral image of it in my head, and so different. Or so much more than I remembered, maybe more than so different, because apparently I did not remember a lot of key moments. And I don't know, looking back, I'm like, I did read this when I was 12. Wow.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I feel like it's a very much like I'm very happy that 12-year-old Hannah loved this book. And I had a romp of a time. Like I listened to it, on 2 times the speed. It was a fun thing of like, well, this is just a middle grade novel. But it is a little shocking that a book that was meant for 12-year-olds happened so quickly and that we loved it so much. I wonder if it's one of those where it's like a little bit too young, but you're at like the cusp of like still wanting that young element and that quick read, even though you want more adult themes, because it was very quick for a novel.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're definitely playing into the whole like, oh, they're not going to be paying that much attention, so let's just throw this in.
Exactly.
I mean, I can definitely see why 10-year-old or 12-year-old Sara really enjoyed this book. I think it's not one that I'm going to reach for again, probably. And it's probably not one that I would recommend to young readers now. But that's kind of the fun of doing this nostalgia book club is going back to these books. And sometimes they still work and sometimes they really don't.
Yeah. Laura.
I read this when I was a lot younger, so I've aged a lot, and I don't know that I would read it again. But I also don't know that I would recommend it. But no, I think that, like it's been said previously, it's trying to do things, it just went about them in the wrong way.
I don't know if I wouldn't not recommend it. Like, I think I would recommend it with caveats. Like, if I had a niece who really loved fairy tales and was super into it, I would be like, well, read this, but like, know that it was written a long time ago and we should probably have a discussion afterwards. Because, like, I think there's something to be loved here. Like, we all loved it when we were around that age. And it's not one that I think there are harmful tropes in this, but I don't think it's a bad it's so bad that it can't be read by young children, but I will
It's not an unreadable book by any means.
I just think that like there are probably other fairy tale retellings that I would recommend first.
That's fair.
Agreed.
Like if someone has read all of them and is still looking for more, yes, read Just Ella. We'll have a discussion afterwards. Because you're right, it's not so bad that it's unreadable. But there are definitely things that don't age well.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Check out Marissa Meyer's Lunar Chronicles, everyone. Those are fairy tale retellings YA.
See? There we go. Read The Two Princesses of Bamarre, the caveats, because we haven't revisited that one yet. Maybe it's
Actually, I'm curious to read that one now. I might pick that one up.
I do actually really want to do that one for a nostalgia book club episode.
Okay.
Next up, guys, we'll just keep going down this tour of princesses.
Princes.
Or what Lilly thought the title was, The Two Princesses of Banana. Because that cursive font on the cover, illegible.
I love that. Well, maybe next time you guys can join us. Before we let you go, Sara, can you tell us something you're reading, watching, and or enjoying right now?
Let's see. I started reading, let me pull it up on my Kindle. It's Dreadful by Caitlin Rozakis.
That sounds
because I decided that I was going to ignore all of my podcast reading and read fun things.
What a vibe.
Yeah. And so the premise is that Gav wakes up in a half-destroyed evil wizard's workshop with no eyebrows and no memories, and is really worried that the evil wizard is going to come and find him. And then he realizes that he is the evil wizard.
Oh, that's fun.
And because he doesn't have all of his memories about like what drove him to being evil, he's not actually quite as bad. And he's coming to terms with like all of the toxic masculinity that got him to that place, and all of the like societal things. So it's been a lot of fun so far. And amazing. Lily, there are goblins, good goblins.
Good. And amnesia. So 2 things that I love quite a bit in books.
I like that you said in books, because I just would love for you to be like, amnesia is something I really love.
I saw that coming and I made up for it.
Also, there's a garlic festival.
Oh, that sounds
Sign me up.
fun. I love this. That sounds amazing. Lily, what is something you're reading, watching, and or enjoying?
Well, kind of perfect for Nostalgia Book Club. We just started rewatching Firefly.
Oh, how has it been?
Still really good. I always feel bad saying that now because I know like, oh, Joss Whedon, not a great guy. Too bad. This show, excellent.
Here's the thing. He made some real bangers of TV
Yeah.
shows. I understand. I've never actually been able to get it through Firefly. I think it's because of the like way episodes are out. Like my brain doesn't work whenever I try to watch them, but I need to go back and try to rewatch. So, because I've heard many, many good things. Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So actually, I've been doing a buddy read with Hassett, our dear friend, and we have been reading Red Darkling. Let me look up the author because they deserve some attention. L.A. Goodler is the author. It's a romp of a sci-fi book with characters that are like there's a couple characters that are just bad, but like the book acknowledges like, yeah, these are terrible people. And I love when an author does that where they're like, yeah, this guy sucks. And it makes it so much easier to like those characters when it's acknowledged that they suck and you aren't like being spoon-fed the whole like, no, they're awesome. You must fall in love with them, even though they do terrible things. So it's really refreshing to have kind of a romp of a book where there's characters who are kind of all over the spectrum in terms of like how likable they are and you like them all, honestly. And there's also this really cute, fun little cat in this named Bonk who like crashes into a bunch of things in the spaceship, and I just love him so much.
You said it was called Red Darkling?
Yes, Red Darkling.
I'm looking that up.
It's a fun book.
Sounds like fun.
Hannah, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So right now I'm currently reading The Outsider by Stephen King. I'm not going to go too far into it because I'm only 50% of the way through, but it started me on a King kick, which happens from time to time. And I realized that one of the trilogies that I really liked, the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, I was really mad when it came out on television because I didn't have access to it, but right now it's up on Peacock. So I started watching the series. And I really like it. I think it's a pretty straightforward adaptation of the books. I would say the one thing that's a little bit weird is like, I hate how nowadays on TV you have to have pretty people be all the like starring actors and actresses. Cause like a lot of times you read them and you're like, oh, this person was like not the best looking. Again, the Just Ella effect of like, well, you're so pretty. But this show like deals with really dark things like incest. And it's just like two pretty people doing that. And it's like, this is just weird. Like, I don't really care for this at all. So, that's the only thing of like, I'm sick of seeing pretty people on TV as like the mainstay. Except for the one main character who is an older gentleman who all they could talk about is how he's not the prettiest person. And I'm like, well, he's the one and he's still going to end up with a very, very pretty, very young woman. So that's fun. Mary Louise Parker, but it's a good time. It's passing the time, and I like dipping into King every so often and then dipping back out. So I'm very much enjoying The Outsider, and jury's a little bit out on Mr. Mercedes. So, well, thank you, ladies, for coming on the podcast to discuss another Nostalgia Book Club. If anyone is interested, most of our Nostalgia Book Clubs, I believe all of them are up on Spotify right now. I will double check that before we go, but you can listen to all of the different ones and a playlist we have for all of our Nostalgia Book Clubs, either on Fiction Fans or over here on our pod. But ladies, could you tell everyone where they can find you?
We're We are on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok at fictionfanspod. You can also email us at fictionfanspod@gmail.com. Our podcast is available on all major podcast platforms. Our website is fictionfanspodcast.com, I believe. We have a Patreon, fictionfanspod again. Basically,
we're consistent.
Yeah, we're consistent. If you search Fiction Fans Pod, you can generally find us.
And this is coming out in like 2 weeks. So could you tell everyone if there's something new on the horizon that they should keep an eye out for, something to be excited for?
What's happening in 2 weeks for us?
What day is today?
It is August 19th.
I think we'll be releasing Unseen Academicals, part of our journey to the center of the disc world.
Ooh, yay.
It.
It's a book that I actually had not read before, so it's always fun stumbling upon those in a series that I consider myself familiar with, but turns out I'm not actually.
You guys are the experts on Discworld. That's what I always say. So make sure everyone's checking out their deep dive into Discworld because it's some of the best discussions of Terry Pratchett and all that. So, well,
and Hannah, where can they find us?
Oh my gosh, every time. You can. Laura's always like, you forgot to do a very important part. You can find us on all the social platforms at OWWR Pod, or check out our website at ourpod.com. We have some great stuff over there, including our reading schedule, blog posts, all that in between. And join us next week as we dive back into the Year of the Dresden, as we cover the first 11 chapters of Death Masks by Jim Butcher. Yay. It's getting real, guys. We have 2 more books this year of Jim Butcher, so keep an eye out for that. But we will have to have you guys back on again soon to discuss nostalgia books or anything else if you guys ever want to come on.
Or anything else.
You don't have to come on every time.
I do love this series, though. It's hard to not.
I know.
I mean, obviously I want to do 2 Princesses of Bamarre, but also I found a book today that I think would be a lot of fun to discuss about, let me see if I can pull up the description. Because it's wild, this description. It's just like,
I'm scared.
It starts hard and it just goes places.
So it's like just Ella.
So there's a 1,000-year-old Viking vampire angel who fights vampire devils. And this book is about him fighting against Isis while keeping the evil Lucifyers, which are demon vampires, at bay. And then a chef hires him to rescue her sister from a cult recruiting terrorists at a Montana dude ranch. So he becomes a cowboy.
I'm just going to level with you.
And then there's more. And then they somehow time travel into the 10th century Norway and
how
have to
long
find
is this
themselves
book?
back to the future. I don't know. It's part of a series about these Viking vampire angels. This is book 7, but I think that they're all basically standalones.
I mean, it sounds like you can just dive right in.
Yes. So
honestly,
I think we have to read it.
I think a good niche for us is nostalgia book club or weird romances. But that actually just sounds like a Harry Dresden book. I'm gonna level with you right now.
What's the title again, Sarah?
It is The Angel Wore Fangs by Sandra Hill.
Okay.
The Angel Wore Fangs.
I will be.
A great title.
Yeah.
I mean, it has a 4.6 on
What?
Amazon and a 3.8 on Goodreads. So
that is not bad.
It sounds like it's a good time, guys. And
it sounds like we would definitely have a good time, if nothing else.
Well,
yes.
We can always have you back for our Christmas themed episodes where we read a really bad book and we could just make it The Angel Who Wore Fangs. It is 376 pages. That's actually a pretty brisk clip.
That's reasonable
for all that it sounds like.
That does that much, yeah.
Yeah. It's like every 30 pages you have to do a scene shift. So it is available at my local library. So we'll have to sign up for that one.
I'm shocked it's not checked out.
There are 3 copies available, guys. So join us next time as we do The Angel Who Wore Fangs. Thank you again for coming on.
Oh, thank you so
much.
much
For having us.
Of course. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.